Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a novelist, a writing coach, a manuscript editor, and a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one to one with me, and I'm one to one with Izolda Trakhtenberg. There she is there. She is a novelist. She is a tarot card reader. She's a lot of things, and we're going to talk about that. But the reason that we're talking to her now is that she's got a brand new novel out. And let me just throw the cover up here so that we can take a look at it. It is Die by the Sword, a Cassie Belmont tarot reader mystery. So, welcome. It's good to see you again. You've been on this show once before.
Thank you for having me, John.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. So tell us about the book first, and then we'll get into tarot reading and all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, it's actually tarot reading is integrated into the book quite a bit because the main character, Cassie Belmont, it's not autobiographical, but her family comes from Moldova, which is where I was born. And she is a professional tarot card reader. And when someone starts killing people and leaving them in tableau that look like her specific tarot cards, the police bring her in to help catch the killer before he strikes again.
Okay, and I just finished reading the book this morning, and I couldn't turn the pages fast enough.
Oh,
Uh,
yay.
you have, I have to say that you write in a way that I write. I mean, I don't think I write as well as you do, but I see similarities in that you're very clear. Every sentence is there for a reason. There's not a lot of atmospherics. It's pure story, but you also do a good job of efficiently revealing character as well, and you throw in plenty of red herrings and false leads and things like that. So you are a writer after my own heart, ma'am.
Well, I thank you for that. And you taught me.
Get
Yes,
out.
I took one of your workshops way
Yeah,
back when I lived
way
in
back.
Maryland, way
Yeah,
back.
Annapolis,
And
wasn't it? In Annapolis?
it was in Rockville, actually.
Is
But
that where it was? Well, I've
yeah,
been all over the place.
yeah, and more power to you. You are helping a lot of writers. And I took your workshop, and it was from novice to novelist, sort of a truncated version. And the way you spoke about story construction really touched something in me. And that's how I've been constructing my stories ever since, actually.
Are you
So
saying you have applied some of the lessons that I taught?
many. Yes,
Really?
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. I learned so much from you. And it's
Thank
funny.
you.
Oh, no, thank you, because you gave us an exercise to do. And I still remember it to this day. You said the exercise was write a short story. You have 10 minutes to write a story about someone coming home from a first date. And I took that and ran with it and actually read it out loud to the
Yeah.
room. I was one of the volunteers to do so. And at the end, you signed I bought your first mystery novel and Fast Track, I think it is.
Right. Yeah.
And because I've read all of them, so she's a
My
great character. She's a great
goodness.
character.
Thank you.
And in it, you said something that just made you. I didn't show you that it made me cry, but it did. You said, "You've got it. You've got what it takes." And I went in your autograph, and I just thought, that was so uplifting to me, and I'm grateful to you all the time. I think of your teaching all the time when I'm writing.
Thank you. Well, I did not know all of that, and but I can certainly see my influence, I guess, in your writing because you write as a writer or as a reader. There are certain things that you like. There's certain ways of presenting a story, and so when you write, and I'm sure you're the same way, you write what you want to read.
Absolutely.
And so that's the way I approach my writing. And I think that's one of the reasons I probably liked the way you constructed your story. Um,
Oh,
because
thank you.
you're very efficient with it. I don't, how many words is it? Do you have a word count?
It is 110,000 words, so a little bit longer than
Yeah.
your usual mystery, but there was a lot, and it's just the first book in the series, so there's so much more. And it's funny that you said you like the DC setting because I lived in DC for many years and just 3 years ago moved to New York City, and of course immediately set my next book back in DC. So, but DC, if you read the book at all, if you see the cover, DC politics plays a role in the book, and you can see the Washington Monument, the Capitol on the cover itself. Because I really wanted to set it. Oh, thank you for doing that. I
Yeah.
really wanted to set the book in a place that I knew intimately, and I know a lot of nooks and crannies. I spent a lot of time on my bike riding around DC, so I tried to find settings for the different scenes and the chapters in the book that were going to be unusual yet very DC. And I had just a blast. And the next few books in the series are going to explore even further into DC life and DC politics and inside and outside the Beltway goings on.
Who designed the cover?
Isn't it gorgeous? My
It
my
is.
my cover designer, she's done all my fiction books actually. Magdalena Adic, and she is in Croatia. I happened to find her when I was looking for a cover designer for my first fiction book, and just she is amazing at taking my meager ideas and then running with them to create something incredible. And what's interesting about this is, as part of everybody had COVID projects, right? My COVID project was I'm gonna design a tarot card deck. And so the two tarot cards you see on the bottom there are actually from the tarot card deck that I designed and that I now use and sell. And, the people kept asking me, do you want to release one? Oh, someday. And then during COVID, I designed it. So those are two of the cards from the actual tarot deck it's called the Functional Tarot. And I went, I want them in the cover somehow. And then she just took it and ran with it. And then the cover model is an amazing actress named Miranda Roldan. And the Storied Life of AJ Fikri, the movie that just came out with Kunal Nayyar, she's in that movie. And she graciously agreed to be the cover model. So you can tell she's just stunningly gorgeous. And she's also recording the audiobook. So I am
Oh
thrilled
my.
beyond the beyond that all of this has come together the way it has.
And it's interesting that in the story, the tarot cards are designed by Cassie, the protagonist, and the murder scenes are based on her specific designs of the tarot cards. So it raises all kinds of questions about her involvement and all that kind of stuff, because
Absolutely.
the cops are a little dubious.
Some of them are anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is interesting though. The way it works in the book is that her deck is her deck, and a little spoiler alert, that's hard to say. She's the only one who has that deck. So that's an interesting little tidbit for you, that if you're the only person who has this particular piece of art, let's say, and someone makes a murder scene that looks just like that one piece of art, that does make the police suspicious for sure. And so she's got to navigate that as she tries to find the killer too.
Tell me about, I mean, I know nothing. I really know nothing about tarot cards. I mean, for a long time, I was an evangelical. And of course, tarot is, don't go there.
Mm,
And um, so you've been involved with this since, you were a kid.
hmm
So obviously, this is something that works. It works for you. It obviously works in other people's lives. Is it deterministic? Is it how would you describe the utility of the tarot cards?
All right, that's a great question, and I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because you said don't go there, and I have to address that. I don't know
Sure.
how many people know, but up until the 13th century, the Catholic Church used tarot cards, and in fact the oldest surviving deck of tarot cards is in the Vatican. So there is some history of interweaving between the use of tarot and the church. And there's also some shenanigans around what is considered evil and what is considered good. So tarot cards in and of themselves, they're a tool. That's all they are, right?
Well,
But
and let me
mhm,
stop you there, because one of the things I noticed in the way Cassie approaches her craft is that, she's very cognizant of, both, good spirits, evil spirits. She does what she can to protect herself.
mhm.
So the takeaway for me was that when you dabble in spirituality, it's very complicated. It's potentially dangerous, but there's also a side for good as well, and it's a matter of being able to discern your way through it. Am I taking it away correctly?
I think that you are, and there's a couple more layers to it. I think part of it is your intention, right? Intention with something like tarot cards or any other sort of focusing tool like that is pretty much everything. Are you intending to harm? No? Great. Are you intending to do good? Terrific. So your like, for example, I have Cassie say in the book, with good for all and harm toward none, so I've spoken, so it shall be done. May this or something better come to pass. So she's always approaching, before any reading, she says this meditation, she says this prayer, and she really wants to do the right thing, and she wants her card readings to be right for the people she's reading for. That is her intent always. So that's part of this, is that in the book she's very about the connection to the spirit world, if you will, but she's also very practical. She wants it to be the right thing for the person she's reading for. If it's not the right thing, then she's going to lose all her clients. So that's part of it too, is that it is her business, but it's also the way she was trained to do as much as possible on the side of good. And so, yes, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, do you have any sense of why the Catholic Church decided that this was verboten?
Yeah, there is some evidence that part of why, and I have to tread a little bit lightly here, but part of why it became verboten is because who's supposed to be the only conduit to God? The Pope. And if you have something that allows you sort of a communication line to the other world, or to the spirit world, or to angels, or to God, or whatever, that's not something the Catholic Church is particularly interested in having happen. So they took the tool and sort of made it private to them, and they still have it. But what is the proof there? Do we have written proof? That's part of the problem with the tarot, is we don't have written proof. Some say that tarot goes back to the time of Egyptian hieroglyphics. Some say it goes back to 13th century Italy. We don't have a written record, so all we can do is speculate. But we do know that the oldest surviving deck is in the Vatican. We do know that at some point they were using it, and then they stopped publicly using it and condemned the use of it otherwise. And I had a high school friend get in touch with me, actually, who he knows that I'm a tarot reader, and he and I hadn't been in touch for many years, and his minister told him that anybody who is a witch, or who does something like read tarot or palms, is inherently evil. And he emailed me and asked me, I know you, I know that you're a good person, but this is what my minister said. So now I have to ask you, are you of the devil? And I went, wow, no. But for him, this was a very serious question, because it called into question for himself what he knew of his friend, me, versus what he was being told in church on Sundays. So there's a lot of sort of misconception going on out there about what tarot is. And this brings me way back around to that first question that you asked.
Which is exactly what I wanted to go back to, the utility of it.
Yes, the utility is, again, that it's a focusing tool. I like to think of it as Carl Jungian, actually, because it's about interpreting symbols and images and telling a story. One of the things that I love about tarot, specifically as a writer, as a storyteller, is that it is a storytelling medium. That's exactly what it is. And I will say to anybody, I will shout it from rooftops, I'm not psychic at all. That's not what I do. I am highly intuitive, for sure, but I am not psychic. I've actually had myself tested because I got curious, and I'm a little below average. And why that's important is because, for me, anytime I try to say what I think is going to happen, I'm wrong. I'm just wrong. I'm not, I might be right, but really I'm wrong. Here's what I do when I read the tarot, and that's why I think this is so functional and practical. All I do, regardless of how weird the story that I'm seeing in the cards is I tell the story I see in the cards. So every card has an image on it, and it has some symbols on it. And what I do, what my job as a tarot reader is to look at those symbols and to tell a story that I see about the symbols on that card. Now, you almost never do just a single card draw. You might have two or three, you might have 10. You can use 56 cards in a particular, what they call a spread. And what I do with it is that, and I then tie in the relationships between one card and the next among the cards themselves. And so when someone lays it out in what they call a spread, and each position in the spread has a different association and each card has a different meaning. So by looking at where the cards fall in the spread, I'm able to weave the story as the cards see it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm telling a story. Now, ideally, honestly, for me, I don't want a question from someone. I want to just do a general reading and tell them what the cards say. I don't want to answer questions because I don't want to bias myself. On the other hand, if somebody has a question, sure, absolutely, I will answer it. But time and time again, I've gotten evidence back from people about how accurate it's been, even though I say something and I go, oh my goodness, they're going to just think I'm just full of crap. And they come back and go, I don't know how you knew that, but that's exactly what's going on. Or they come back 2 years later and say, you told me this would happen last March, and last March it happened. And that is me looking at specifically the symbols, the time frames. The cards have all of that in them if you know how to read them. You look at the symbols and the time frames and all of that in the cards, and then you tell the story that you see in them. It's like writing from prompts. It's very similar to that, actually.
Let me ask something more specific,
Hmm.
because I raised the issue of determinism earlier.
Hmm.
And if something is predicted to happen on a certain date or a certain month, and it does, isn't that in a sense deterministic? Isn't that something that, you have no control over? I mean, where does free will come in?
Ah, okay. So I love this, and I'm not a fatalist at all. So let me explain how things go. The way I look at it when I'm reading tarot is if the cards, I don't, it's not even me predicting. If the cards say this is going to happen in June, then this is what's going to happen in June. If you keep going on the trajectory you're going on per the spread, right? So if I say, hey, I had a client once, for example, and I told her, I said, are you planning on traveling somewhere in April? And she said, no, I'm not. And I said, if friends are going somewhere, especially somewhere fun, and they ask you to go, go, because that's where you're going to meet the man you'll eventually fall in love with and get married. And and she said, "No, okay, I don't have any plans to travel." And about 8 months after that, I got this phone call from her. She said, I just wanted you to know that my friends were going to Vegas and they invited me, and it was in April. And I went, and I was at the roulette table, and there was another man at a man at the roulette table, and we started chatting. And it turns out he lives 10 miles from me, and we're getting married next June.
Wow.
And so in that moment, was that deterministic? No. She absolutely had free will to make choices. She could have not gone on the trip. She could have decided to go elsewhere. She could, any number of things could have happened if she, and since she followed the trajectory that the cards sort of laid out for her, it sort of, the finale, if you will, was the way the card said it would be.
It was like you pointed out what the setting could be,
Hmm.
and then she made the actual decision to get into that setting.
Exactly.
The Cassie has relationships with the police in the sense that she's brought in to help them. She as a consultant
Hmm.
to help them solve murders, and I know that there are some police departments who do turn to people like this, and yet I know there's probably a tremendous amount of skepticism as well.
Hmm.
And so my question is, based on the writing of this novel and any research that you did, um, there's certainly a lot of specificity that Cassie was able to bring to the crimes in question. Was that, in a sense, creative license, or how frequent are tarot readers involved successfully with police departments?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question because that's not something. This is one of those things where it's kind of like Nancy Reagan and the astrologer. People don't want to talk about, oh, I go to a tarot reader. So I've read for some of the biggest wigs in DC, for example, but it's not something anyone's going to jump up and down and go, I went to a tarot reader. So that kind of data is not readily available. I took creative license to have Cassie, and she, by the way, just so you know, she helps people. She helps the police find kidnapping victims. When she works with the police, that's what she does. And so I took that as it would be a creative license. Have I helped people find lost objects? Absolutely. I had this one time. A man came to me and he said, "I have this family heirloom ring. It's so important to me, and I think it was stolen, and I need you to help me find it." And I said, "Well, I don't really help find lost objects, but I'll try." And the card said that the ring was not stolen, it was misplaced, and that it was in the dark, close to him, surrounded by wood. And both of us were whatever. And a few months later, he got in touch with me to say that he had been taking a bunch of bags of books to the used bookstore, and as he's unboxing the books, taking them out of the bags, the ring fell out of one of the bags. And the bags of books had been sitting in the trunk of his car for months. He didn't realize that's where the ring was, but sure enough, they were right near him, surrounded by wood, all of that paper
Paper,
in
sure.
the dark. So how did I do that? I didn't. Again, my job as a reader. Now, other tarot readers or whoever they are will have different processes. My job is to tell you what I see in the cards. And as I do this thing called the tarot tales, where when I get readings that are really evocative and even provocative, I will write them up for my friends on Facebook, or I post them publicly. They're anonymous, of course. I don't reveal any names, but so many times, and I've read for over 15,000 people now. So many times I've had people come back to me and say things like, I was single for 17 years, and you told me that if I waited for just 2 years, I'd be married and have a son. And sure enough, 2 years later, I was married and had a son.
Mhm.
And so often this happens that I don't, honestly, John, I don't question anymore how I know and why I know. All I know is that I they pull, actually, the person pulls the cards. I don't. They pull the cards. I tell them the story I see in the cards. And often, so often, they come back to me and go, wow, I don't know how you did that, but wow, that was amazing.
Well,
So,
let's talk about how you did
mhm,
that, because you've been doing this for over 30 years.
mhm, mhm.
And my guess is that you weren't amazing as a tarot reader at first. It was an acquired, it was a skill that you had to learn how to interpret the cards and things like that. So, how did it evolve? I mean, give me some examples perhaps of how you got it dreadfully wrong in the very beginning,
Ah,
mistakes that you made.
I will have to think of those while I tell you how I started. So how I
Sure.
started reading was actually I was born in Moldova. My great grandmother taught me how to read regular playing cards, which are, by the way, the descendant of tarot cards. You can actually draw the parallels between the suit of hearts and the cups, the suit of clubs and the rods. They took that. It is the sort of the child of the tarot, is the regular playing card deck. And so, just so you know, in Moldova, it's not a psychic thing. It is very much it's just what you do. It's like tying a string around your finger so you'd remember something that you needed to do. It's just one of the things you do. And she taught me when I was 4 years old. And when I was 15, I took a look at the Borders books and went, wait, what are these? Because I saw the tarot display and I went, huh, this seems familiar. And I picked up my first tarot deck and was off and running and started reading for myself and for friends and things like that. And honestly, the way that it evolved was to trust myself. And so much of what I say sometimes makes me go, she's just, or he's just, or they're just going to think I'm completely full of crap. And I trust that what I have to say is what I'm supposed to be saying. So I say it. And more often than not, pretty much all the time, actually, I'd say 80 to 85% of the time, the person resonates with what I'm saying, even if what I'm saying feels like it's going to be completely out of left field.
And the more you do this, the more confident you get in being able to articulate what it is you interpret.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I am currently developing a class on how to read tarot the practical way, the functional way. And I did some market research, if you will, and I asked a bunch of people, what is it that you would most want to learn when reading tarot cards? And everybody came out with two main points. They wanted to know the meanings of the cards easily, and they wanted to have the confidence to say what they saw. Those seem to be the two big barriers to reading tarot, to becoming a reader. And
When you
yes, go
say
ahead.
when you say interpreting the cards, the other thing though is that there are different designs, right? So you
Mhm.
can come up with your own designs, but does that in a sense change the meaning, or how do if you have a unique design for a card, how does that affect interpretation?
The way I look at it, and this is a really good question. The way I look at it, honestly, is that it's Jungian. It's what the symbols mean to you as the reader. So when you are looking to find, I have a whole article that I wrote many years ago for a magazine about how to choose your first deck. Because when you're looking to find a deck, you're going to see a bunch that are just pretty pictures, and they're lovely, but they don't really resonate. They don't make you go, "Oh, I want to know more about this card." And for me, the most important thing is, does it make you want to tell a story? Do you want to think about what the symbols are on the card? If you do, great. If you don't, then maybe that's not the deck for you, even if it's beautiful, even if you find it stunning. It might not be the deck you read with. For example, for until I designed my own deck, I at one point had over 200 decks in my collection because people started sending me them and all of this other stuff, just like, oh, I put out this tarot deck. Would you review it? Sure. And so I had a bunch of decks, but I only read with one.
Hmm.
Only read with one. Mary Hanson Roberts, who created just an easy to read, beautiful deck. It's called the Hanson Roberts Tarot. And I love that deck. And the only reason I stopped using it is because I created my own. And I wanted to create something, again, that was functional and practical and incredibly easy to interpret. So when you're doing this, when you're reading, you easily see the symbols. You easily can tell what the story might be. Other decks are very esoteric, and you'll look at them and go, this is beautiful, but it might not be something, again, that evokes a story from you. It might just be a beautiful piece of art.
Tell me about your spiritual roots. Were you raised in a specific religion, or were you always sort of, spiritual without any doctrine to go with it?
Well, I was born in a communist country, so my first few years were non-religious.
Atheist.
Absolutely, complete. Well, and it's not. I won't even say atheist. Not. It wasn't a rejection of God. It was more not knowing. I didn't know what a God concept was until we got to Israel. And even then, no one actually explained it to me. We lived in Israel for 9 months and I didn't quite understand what all of it meant. But my parents were in a very ultra Orthodox synagogue because that's how we came over. The Jewish community sort of was bringing in 1973. Brezhnev said to all the Jews, "We don't want you. If you don't want to be here, get out." And so that's what my family did. They applied for visas. We moved from there to Romania to Israel, and then from Israel to Italy, and then finally from Italy to here. And there was a process, and it was the sort of the Lubavitcher synagogue that was making that possible. So we landed in Detroit and went to Lubavitcher Synagogue, and I got very into it because I loved how much they loved animals. And then there came the day when I was 9 years old, and I was in Hebrew school. And at the time, I was still fluent in Hebrew. And there was a kid who was practicing for his bar mitzvah. And one of the things that he was reading the prayers, and one of the prayers that he read was, "Dear God, thank you so much for not making me a woman." And I went, whoop, you
Yeah.
know. And I said, "So do girls get to do the same thing?" And the teacher said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Do girls get to say, 'Dear God, thank you so much for not making me a man'?" And the teacher went, "No." And I collected my little books and my notebook and everything, and I marched right out of there. And I came home and I said, "Mom, I am not going back to Hebrew school. I'm not a Jew anymore." And she said, "What?" And I explained what happened. And she said, "Okay, you don't have to go back." And so that was sort of the point at which I let go of religion, didn't let go of spiritual leanings, because I believe in honoring the cycles of nature, for example. I love animals and I think they're sentient. And I love watching sunrises. And to me, those are spiritual experiences. So I stopped being Jewish per se, but I did not stop being spiritual.
I'm going to take what may seem like a sharp turn, and I'm not sure what the answer is going to be,
Of
but I
course.
know from your bio that you are a former master trainer for NASA, the
Hmm.
National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So the question is, did tarot play a role in this?
In my stuff at NASA. Wow. So you are asking a provocative question because I'm not, yes and no, in that I worked in environmental education, earth science education. When I worked at NASA, I worked for a program called the GLOBE program, and it was global learning and observations to benefit the environment. That's what GLOBE stands for. And it was started by Al Gore in his book. The idea came about from his first book. And Earth in the Balance sort of detailed what he envisioned as far as this kind of international education program involving students of all ages, that they would all work together to benefit the environment, both local, regional, and international, which I think is great. And I got to work for Dr. Elisa Levine, who's a soil scientist there, and I got to travel all over the world and train people on these protocols and teach people about the environment, which was amazing. And the parallels that I draw is that we have spheres on the earth. We have the hydrosphere, the water. We have the pedosphere or lithosphere, the sort of the land and soil. We have the atmosphere, which is the air and the clouds and all of that. And we have the biosphere, which is all the living beings on the earth. And the thing about this to me is, or living things, I'll say, because plants are in there too. The thing about this to me that's so interesting is that there are elements that we associate with that: earth, air, fire, and water, right? We can look at the pedosphere. The soil is the earth, the air is the atmosphere, the water is the hydrosphere, and the biosphere, which is teeming life, is sort of the fire of everything. And in tarot, there are suits. We have the swords, which are air, we have the rods, which are fire, we have the cups, which are water, and we have the coins, which are earth. And so drawing those kinds of parallels, to me, it's a very natural process, because you can look at so many different modalities and draw those same parallels. And to me, it all comes back to honoring the natural cycles. And that is how tarot would play into it. Did I ever do readings for people? Yes. When we did some of these workshops, people found out that I could read tarot and palms, and everybody would go, okay, read my palm. That was one of the first things anybody ever did. And in fact, I worked the Halloween party for the 2015 Obama White House Halloween party. And as soon as people came in and got their tarot, maybe it was for fun. People came in and got their tarot readings. But then as soon as they found out I did palm readings too, all the people who'd gotten their tarot readings had wanted their palm read, because I read palms differently than tarot, of course. And so everything can be interwoven and interrelated, if you will. My work at NASA was very much a science and education, but I tried to make it as creative as possible. And I just said this to my best friend on the phone this morning. I believe I sit where science and spirit intersect. That's where I sit. That's where I work. That's where I want to do all of my creativity and all of my teaching. I have not stopped teaching. I'm known as the Earth Lady, and I help creative earthlings become activists to save the earth. That's one of my primary goals in life, is to really work on conservation and addressing climate change and wildlife and habitats and all of that. So it's all part of it. It's always going to be part of it. And the relationships I can always draw from one to the next, even if I'm not going out and doing tarot readings at a workshop I'm doing, unless it's a tarot workshop, I'm still looking at those connections in a way that is very holistic and integrated, if you will.
You mentioned doing some tarot readings for fun per se, but I guess another question I've got about this, obviously I know nothing, which is why I ask questions. And since I asked so many questions, I obviously don't know much. So here's my question now, and that has to do with, in a sense, I would imagine that a lot of people want to know, when am I going to die, or
Mhm.
how am I going to die?
Mhm.
How do you deal with, those kind of mortality questions? Because presumably, and I don't know if this is true, presumably, or you can discern a person's end and how it would happen.
Yes, I was just doing a birthday party for a bunch of 10-year-olds just this past Saturday night, and 201 they wanted to know, and my answer is very simple. Yes, I can tell. No, I will never tell you. And here's why. I truly believe that what is important is to live the very best life you can now, a life of kindness and creativity and compassion and curiosity. And that knowledge of when you were going to die would make you focus on that more than living a really, really good life now. So even if I know, I will never, ever, ever, ever tell you. On the other hand, here's something that I'm gonna tell you a quick little story about this whole death thing. I was doing a tarot reading for a woman, and this I used to work at the Maryland Renaissance Festival back when I lived in DC and read tarot. And a woman came in and she was having trouble writing her book. And she had terrible writer's block, and that's what she wanted to know. And the cards were very clear. Do not worry about the book. Stop worrying about the book. There is something going on in your lower belly. You need to go to the doctor now. Go tomorrow. Go Tuesday if you have to. Just go. And she went, okay, I feel fine. And I said, do me a favor, get the best team. You're going to be fine, but you have to get the absolute best team. Whatever's going on, you need to address it right now. And she left. I didn't hear from her until a year later. She came back to the Renaissance Festival and she had a bouquet of flowers for me. And she bought a reading, but she didn't want a reading. She came in to chat and she said, these are for you. She gave me the flowers and wow, that's great. Thank you. Why? And she said, you probably don't remember me, but last year you told me that that it's something going on in my lower belly, that I needed to get to the doctor right away. And she said, I kind of went, oh, okay. I went to the doctor and they discovered stage 4 ovarian cancer.
Mm.
And she said, I did exactly what you said. I got the best team. I got everything I needed to get taken care of. We did it. I am completely cancer free. And then she reaches into her bag and she pulls out a book and she said, and this is the book I wrote about the experience. And so it was, the cards were completely on. They said, absolutely get to the doctor and don't worry about a book. Right. So all of that happened the way the cards said that it would, in part because she went, okay, let me do this. Let me call the doctor. And all of the rest happened that way. So my deck tends to focus on calls to action to make things better rather than on, oh, doom and gloom and dark despair.
Do you know how you're going to die and when?
I don't. I have not looked. I have
That
not.
was my question. You just don't want to know, even if
No.
you could find out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could find out, but again, I think I would focus too much on that and not enough on living a really good life now and enjoying myself and being, working with trying to save animals and all of the other things I do, writing more books. All of that stuff is what I want to do, not focusing on, oh, on April 3rd, 2051, I'll die. That's not a useful way of living
Then you
life.
become obsessed with that. Oh,
Exactly.
all right, let's switch gears. This has been fascinating, and I feel like I've learned a lot. But let's talk about something that you and I both know a little about, and that's writing.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your process in terms of how you approached novel writing, how you approach it. What are you, a planner, a pantser, a plantser?
I am a wannabe planner and I end up having to catch my characters. So what happens is I think to myself that I know what I'm going to write, and in the process of writing, things start happening. The characters start getting away from me, and I go, "Oh, that's where that was going to go." So sometimes, despite the fact that I'll plan like crazy, and there's a fudge, I don't remember the name of the book at the moment. There's a something like write your novel in 30 days or something, and she has this lovely, it's for NaNoWriMo. It's for National Novel Writing Month that she created this book. And I decided I was going to try and do that. I was going to try and do NaNoWriMo. But the way she set the book up kind of made me go, huh, okay, I need a as a spreadsheet or something to go through these points. And she talks about, what does the world think about your theme, and what is your theme, and what does your antagonist think about your protagonist, and you have to sort of develop all these relationships. So I wrote all that stuff down, and then telling the story became very easy for me. And so when I do it, I try to plot it all out, but ultimately, again, some of the things that I thought that would happen, especially in Die by the Sword, they took a left turn at Albuquerque. Let me just tell you, they just went somewhere where I didn't expect. And then I had to catch up and go, oh. And interestingly, in my first series, it's an urban fantasy series, I would write something, and I wrote something in book one and went, well, I don't know why that's there. Okay. And then in book two, it resolved, and I went, oh, that's why I wrote it. And so
Do you use tarot cards at all to create characters or situations?
sometimes one of the things that in fact, I'm working on that very part of the class that I'm creating right now. Tarot is very, because the cards are evocative, because the cards have characters on them and scenes on them. Not my cards do. Not every tarot deck has cards that have a scene for every card. Most of them have what they call the major arcana, which is the life cycle. So you start with the Fool or card 0, and you go end with the World in the major arcana, which is card 21. So 22 cards that you can look at that are bigger than the day-to-day: the sun, the moon, the star, the magician, the tower, all of that. There are all these big cards, and they're the things that are out of your control when it comes to the tarot. And then there are the cards that are sort of the again, the ancestor of the modern day playing deck. They're the pip cards. They're the suits, swords and rods and cups and coins, and then the eighths through 10, and then the page, knight, queen, and king. And so when you look at them, some of them just have like 3 cups on a card instead of having a scene. My deck, for example, has a scene that's evocative of something that's going to give you an easier way to interpret it. So when I'm looking for example, what's a person going to look like, I might choose a celebrity. Some of my cards, some of my characters look like celebrities.
Sure.
And I also sometimes choose a card and go, okay, this card has a dark-haired, dark-eyed woman on it. So this woman that I'm thinking about is going to have dark hair and dark eyes. She's going to have this kind of figure, blah, blah, blah. And it's all part and parcel because that's the card that I chose. And there are times when I'll also go, should this plot point happen? And if so, how? And I'll draw a card and it will say yes. And here's a path, because I happen to choose a card that has a river on it or a pond. So then that scene might take place by a river or by a pond. And if you read the book, you know what river I'm talking about.
You mentioned Jungian symbolism, so presumably dreams in some way come into your life in terms of being able to interpret things, because Jung, I guess, came up with a lot of symbols that helped people interpret some of what was going on in their dream life. Is that true for you too?
Absolutely. And I think that for me, it's not just dream life. I know that dream walking, if you look at the Aboriginal cultures in Australia, that they believe that their dream life is actually another life. They're living their day life and they're living their dream life, and the two are they're wholly equal, if you will. I'm not sure that that is the case for me because we're not physically moving. I don't believe that necessarily, but I do believe that our subconscious has a nice little record of everything we've experienced, everything we've imagined, and everything we could imagine. And so dreaming to me is a way of accessing some of that. It's something like you're trying to remember something, you can't remember it, you stop thinking about it, and then 3 days later it sort of ploops right into the forefront of your mind, and you go, oh, that's what it was. And that's our subconscious working. It's worrying in the background, and then it brings it up.
I've found, and I think because you've taken my class, you know that this is one of my biases, I guess, is that a lot of times what I try to teach is, in a sense, automatic writing.
Mhm, mhm.
Don't think, just write. And it's
Absolutely.
the curiosity that causes things to bubble up. And if you're writing without that critical left brain editorial scold, you just write, then you'll probably be able to access things more easily. And it's a great way to overcome writer's block. I would imagine you never have writer's block.
No. And in fact, here's what I do for writer's block. This is a little tip from me to, not you, of course, because I know you're an amazing writer and you don't need this. If you're looking to write and you're stuck, here's the question that I ask myself to help me get over any kind of block. I ask this: if I were someone who knew what to say right now, what would I say?
Yeah.
And then I say what I would say. And sometimes I start writing with blah, 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 freaking blah, blah, blah. And I just type that and something happens after that. It's just about, honestly, it's about starting. And they say put your butt in the seat. I don't. I wrote 3 of my books hiking in the woods with my dog, writing, sort of speaking voice to text into my phone. However it works for you to create,
And
however
it
it
can,
works for you to write, do
and
it.
doing that transcribes it. You can do it. You can
Mhm.
talk it, and it does transcribe it, right?
Absolutely. And there is a wonderful, I use I'm not an affiliate with them or anything, but I use transcribeme.com. If you give them a 45-minute file of audio and the audio is clear, it does machine transcription for a whopping 7 cents a minute. For $2.80, you can have 45 minutes of audio transcribed into a Word document. And I love that. It makes writing so much easier if what I want to do is I want to speak what I want to write.
I want to ask you what's next, and you've sort of alluded to that in terms of the class that you want to teach on how to
Mhm.
interpret tarot, but why not a book as well to go with that?
Uh, it's like you had a little piece of paper that told you everything to ask. Actually, both are happening. I right now I'm putting the finishing touches on the book that accompanies the deck, the Functional Tarot, and that is gonna. I'm trying to get it out by Halloween. I'm not sure if it will, but at least by the holiday season. So that will be out. And the class itself is interesting because I already teach a 3 workshop series. So you start complete novice, and by the end of the 3rd workshop, you're ready to be a professional tarot reader. So we go through how to work everything from how to read a card to how to work with agents to book yourself for events. Because a lot of people perhaps want to get more involved. They don't know how. That maybe if you want to be a pro reader, you don't know how to do that. But what if you just want insight for yourself, right? You can read tarot wonderfully to get insight on what's going on in your own head, what's going on in your own spirit and mind and body. How do I get this clarity? Well, draw a card and see if any of what is there resonates with you. The key is about being honest with yourself about what you're seeing and not going, no, 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 this is not what I think. So that's part of it is teaching these classes. But the class that I'm developing right now is actually going to be an online class. So anybody in the world who wants to take it will be able to do that.
Are you also working on book 2 in the Cassie Belmont series?
Yes, I'm super excited about that actually, and thank you for asking. That one, what I decided to do with these books, and here's I have a little copy of Die by the Sword. So if you look at it, let's see if I can do it there. So swords are one of the suits.
I'm gonna pull it up full
Awesome,
screen. Hold
awesome.
on just a second. There we go.
So swords are one of the suits in the tarot deck, and I decided that what I was going to do was write 4 books, and swords are one, and that's the title, Die by the Sword. The second one is called The Poisoned Cup, and that's going to be the second book in the series. And then Spare the Rod and Spoil the Child, and then Coin of the Realm is book 4, and it's all different aspects of the suits and how they're going to relate to Cassie and the world that she inhabits. So book 2 is in process even as we speak.
Are you traditionally published, self-published? How would you describe the business side of it?
The business side of it is I remember I said Creative Earthlings earlier. So I have my own. It's called Creative Earthlings Media. It's my own publishing company, and I am publishing other people's work as well. And I actually started this group called the Vegan Writers of New York City when I moved here, and that is a group of writers who are vegan, and we are helping each other grow as writers. Because I think working collaboratively is great, but also accountability and having people who are cheering you on and supporting you, but also who are there to give you a swift kick in the butt when you need it is amazing. So I started this group, and we do prompt exercises, which are I have these cards that I developed, and they are an object, a location, and a profession. 20 different words of each. We choose one at every meeting, and we choose like on a location. A location could be a forest, an object could be a ring, and a profession could be a scientist. And you have to use those 3 words in the story you write for 10 minutes. And that I started doing that. I teach writing workshops, and when I started doing that, people really, when you have something to hone in on, you're like, oh, it's much easier for me to write because I kind of have a subject and maybe even a setting, and I can write more easily rather than going, oh, I don't know what to do here. So we have these stories that we wrote in 10 minutes, and we decided that, and actually, since it's pure creativity, the stories came out amazing. They're short, they're a page and a half. but they're really incredible little nanofiction, if you will. And so this kind of flash fiction is a way to get yourself writing. So this book, it's called In a New York Minute. This anthology is all of these stories that we've written for since COVID 2021, 2020. And we're going to have these little stories, and the writers who've participated are all going to be in the anthology. And the reason I wanted to put it out is because they're, John, I'm sure you see this when people take your workshop. People have stories inside them, but they're deathly afraid to tell those stories.
Right.
And I want to make it easier for people. And this is it's a great, easy on-ramp to get you writing.
Before we run out of time, I want to have you talk a little bit about your podcast.
Oh, yay.
Because I would imagine that you bring a lot of this together.
Well, yes, and you've been on it, and I want you to come back, actually, because it's been a while.
Deal. It's a deal.
Awesome. So the Innovative Mindset podcast, the reason I started it was because, again, I am always interested in looking for creative ways that we can work together, but also to save the world. We have a lot of issues, and I wanted to get innovators, creatives, and people working in the social impact and environmental space to talk about how they're doing what they're doing to help inspire other people to do the same thing, to get involved, to get excited, to get inspired, to do what they can. And so I've had Gene Bauer from Farm Sanctuary. I've had Tom Peters, who wrote the biggest book as far as business success. It's called In Search of Excellence. He's been on the show a couple of times because they're looking at how to do some of these things differently. They're innovators looking to make things better and to change the world for the better. And so that's what the Innovative Mindset is about talking to people and finding out how they do what they do. But there's also an aspect of it that is very creative. We have to think differently. We have to think innovatively in order to make some of these changes. And to me, that's all about being artistic and creative. So I also pepper in writers and artists and musicians and people like that, because that kind of it's possible, or imagine if, or I'm curious about that thinking is brilliant. And it's the way we can really save the world as far as I'm concerned. And so that's what I'm trying to highlight with the podcast.
How often do you do a podcast?
So it is weekly. For a while, I was 5 days a week, which was too much. And because it was one interview and 4 sort of mini episodes by me solo, talking about different aspects of curiosity, creativity, confidence, communication. Those are my little 4 C's that I talk about in every workshop I teach. And then I sort of had to pull back because too many other things were going on. And now it's once a week. And till the end of the year, it's going to be a combination of interview. It's always Monday, interview. And then the following week, one of the workshops that I do with writing groups is a lot of authors especially want to get on podcasts, but they don't know how. And so I teach a workshop on how to pitch yourself to be a guest on podcasts. And so these next few episodes that are me, alternate weeks, are all about what you need to do to find the right podcast to pitch yourself for, how you need to approach the producer or the host, and what you need in, for example, your press sheet. What do you need in one? What makes for one that will get them excited enough to have you on their show? And so that's what these episodes are all about, how to do it successfully so that you can get the word out about the work that you're doing.
So what I have on the screen there is how people will be able to get to your podcast.
Awesome.
It's izoldat.com/blog, correct?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Okay. And if people want to get in touch with you for anything else, this is what I have. You can tell me if I've got it right or not. izoldatauthor.com.
Absolutely. You can find me also pretty much everywhere except Facebook at Izolda T. If you search on Izolda T, everywhere from TikTok to Twitter to Instagram, anywhere, that's who I am. Except for I was a little too slow, and on Facebook I'm Izolda ST, which is my middle initial. I took a middle name on when I became a citizen, because in the Soviet Union you have a patronymic, and I didn't want to have a patronymic, so I took, and it is the most non-Soviet name ever. My middle name is Serena because I took it on when I became a citizen and added it in.
When you say patronymic, what do you mean? That's the patriarchy kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a patriarchy thing. Basically, you don't have a middle name in the Soviet Union or in that culture. You have a sort of your father diminutive, if you will. So, for example, I was Izolda Yakovlevna Trakhtenberg. And Yakovlevna is my father's name is Yakov or Jacob. And so I uh, didn't want that as part of my name anymore. And when the way you sign your name on your citizenship paper is your name. So for a little while, I was going to become Serena Giles because I deplored and detested Izolda Trakhtenberg because it was such a tough name as a child. Now I love it, but then, as when you have a strange name, wow.
Like DeDakis.
Like DeDakis, exactly, exactly.
You don't
You
have
and
to be
I,
so quick to agree, ma'am.
no, 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 no. It's true though, because regardless of you loving it now, and I'm sure you do because it sets you apart, as a child, kids are cruel. So they can be very, very mean. And teachers weren't at that time trying to pronounce names. They would just go, I have a name here. And I'd be like, yeah, that's me. So,
In the Army, it was you, alphabet.
right. Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to be Serena Giles. But at the last minute, I just couldn't do it. And so I just took on Serena as a middle name.
Well, and it's if anybody is interested in spelling it, it's Trakhtenberg. It's that KHT that
Mm-hmm.
can trip everybody up, and that's how you can tell if people are getting it right or not.
Yeah, and I've misspelled it myself. So I also have gotten, I save the letters that I've gotten to addressed to Griselda Dragonburp and Izimbra Dragonburger, and it's wackadoo the ways people have just run away with spelling my name. Izimbra Dragonburger actually is, I decided she's a character in a book I'm going to write someday. She's a master spy, and the book starts with her hanging by her fingertips off a cliff. So, so I'm making lemonade with those particular lemons.
This has been so much fun to talk to you. We've been talking to Izolda Trakhtenberg. She's a novelist, a tarot card reader, incredibly creative, engaging, has a wonderful voice.
Thank you so
And
much.
it's wonderful to talk to you again. I'm John DeDakis. That's how you can get in touch with me, John DeDakis, DEDAKIS.com. And this has been wonderful. And we need to talk again.
That would be great.
And good luck with the book. I hope it goes well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on the show, John.
This was fun. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.